Wow. Kind of sounding kind of good there. Hallelujah. All praises going up to our Abba. Hallelujah. All praise and honor going up unto our Father, our Abba up in heaven, and his only begotten Son, Yahusha, HaMashiach, the world calls Jesus Christ. We certainly give him praise, glory, and honor on tonight. We welcome everyone into our Torah teaching on today. We give honor unto his Ruach, his Spirit, that is giving us life and life more abundantly. So we certainly want everybody to join us on today, and as I get this together here. So we welcome everyone, all the kings and queens, sons and daughters, the Culties, the Ox, and Hebrews and Sebrews, and all sojourners, all kinfolk, all that are related unto him through the Ruach, the Spirit. Those who are doing the will of our Father, our Abba in heaven. It was asked of our Messiah. It was asked of him in the book of Matthew when the multitudes were around him and his mother and his family, his brothers and sisters came to him and wanted to speak to him, and disciples got a hold of him and said, "Hey, your family wants to talk to you, trying to get your attention." He said, "Who is my family?" And he stretched out his arms around to show the multitude and said, "He that doeth the will of my Father, the same as my brother, my sister, and my mother." So it's highly important that we do the will of our Father if we want to be chosen by him and be a part of his body. Because nobody that is, a lot of people say things. You can say whatever you want to say, but nobody is his brother or sister or in the body or in his family that is not doing the will of our Father in heaven. And we are led in our generation today and generations in the past, and we've been led by men and women that do things contrary to his will and his word, but yet, we call them, they're saved, they're saints. And so a lot of our teaching and our understanding of the book comes from people who do not follow this. And if you would pull up Matthew 4:4. If you would pull up Matthew 4:4. This current generation and those who call themselves saved, they call themselves saved. And I was looking at, because we know what when it says in English saved, what it's saying in the Greek is soteria or sozo. Sozo, say, is a short version of soteria. And soteria is to be rescued. It is to be delivered. It's to be rescued. So it also means health. One of the meanings of the word is health, to be in good health. So I was thinking about how many times do we get soteria? How many times do we get rescued? How many times have you been rescued in your life? If you were drowning in water, because I've been in a pool and I thought I could swim. I was a young boy, thought I could swim in a pool and realized that I couldn't, and I started to drown unless somebody soteria, sozo. Sozo means to save. Soteria means to rescue, to deliver. If they would not had exercised soteria, I would have drowned. So as the more I look at the word and what it means and everything, I'm just wondering, how many times do we get saved? I mean, how many times were you drowning where somebody saved you? Because that would be soteria. How many times were you lost and you had to be rescued? How many times have you sent up the SOS? And send up the SOS and say, hey, somebody got to save me, I mean, how many times have you done that and you were rescued? You were rescued. So, for us to have a deeper meaning of certain words and what they mean, it does require some study and some understanding. It's good to understand things. That's why Yahusha, who they call Jesus, Yahusha said, he that endureth to the end, the same shall be what? Going to be rescued. He that endureth to the end is going to be rescued. Before we go to Matthew 4:4, Luke 1:69. Luke 1:69. And hath raised up a horn of, here's salvation or soteria, for us in the house of Daud or David. And he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be soteria or saved. What are we going to be saved from? Now, this is, because see this, we don't believe everything in the book. I'm just going to say that right now. A lot of people who, do a lot of the teaching and we do a lot of listening and everything. If we believe everything in the book from cover to cover, we would understand, okay, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. So, have you been soteria? Do you still have enemies? Do you still have people who hate you? So we waiting on this. We waiting on this. That we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us, so that we can perform the mercy that was promised unto our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he sware unto our father Abraham, that he would grant unto us, that we being delivered. So let's see what this word is in the Greek. Let's see what this word is in the Greek. Delivered. And that is G4506. Ramai. Through the idea of a current. To rush or draw for once. That is what? Rescue. So it's almost like the word soteria. It's a different Greek pronunciation, but it almost has the same definition of soteria. Has anybody been keeping up with the news today on the definition of a woman? Did anybody catch that today? Does anybody remember when, I can't think of her name right now. I think her last name is Jackson or something. She is the new justice on the Supreme Court. And she was going through her Senate confirmation. And so the question was asked by one of the representatives or one of the senators. The question was asked, what is a woman? Can you tell me what a woman is? And do you guys remember what she said? Anybody remember what she said? Yeah, she said, I'm not. She says, no, I can't give you a definition of a woman. I'm not a. Can you imagine that? We got somebody sitting on the Supreme Court that couldn't give you a definition of a woman. So in the Cambridge, they added to the definition of a woman, and that came out today. Definition of a woman is someone of the female anatomy, the current female anatomy, regardless of what their birth was or their birth origin. So that's another definition of woman. See how by a stroke of a pen, they have words and they can give you meaning of words by a stroke of the pen. Whoever's in control of the pen, they're the ones that write history. So now, another definition of a woman is somebody of the female anatomy, the current female anatomy, regardless of what they were at birth. So you could have been born a male, go through the transition to be a woman, and you're considered a woman. And you can't they don't want you to put trans in front of it. They want you to recognize them as a woman. You can't say biological woman. You can't even say natural woman. It's a woman. We are up against a beast and an enemy and somebody that hates us to the point where by the stroke of a pen, they can change and upset your life by the stroke of a pen. We are engaged, and I don't think many of us understand the warfare that we're in. I don't think many of us understand the warfare that we're in. I think we're more, a lot of us are more nonchalantly walking through life. We don't have, there's a lot of things that we struggle with when it comes to meaning and definition. We understand Torah through the commentary of the post-apostolic fathers. Everybody that goes to a building with a steeple in it, and you come from the word kirka, which is the root word for circus and church. I don't like the definition but they can, by the stroke of a pen, they can tell you what it means. Kirka, where does kirka come from? What does kirka mean? Kirka means circus. We're also going to say kirka means church. Well, I might not agree with that. Well, you ain't saved. You're going to because I don't like the translation of kirka into church, because what he was talking about in his day was called out ones. I'm calling out ones in Israel. He didn't say he was going to, even in the days of his ministry, he only had certain ones that he called out. Even on the day of Pentecost, we call it the day of Pentecost, first it was 120. How many of the house of Israel did you think was there? There was a lot of them because it was a time of the feast. So they came from all over Africa and Eurasia and up in that round. They came from all over to be there. Did he save all of them? Did he call out all of them? No, he only called out, even at first it was 120 he called. I'm going to call out 120. And then he said, I added 3,000 more that were called out of the nation. He's only going to have a remnant. That's all he's going to have is a remnant. That's understanding the book from Genesis to Revelation. He's only going to have a remnant. And even Shaul, in the 11th chapter of Romans, he said Elijah in his day told the Most High, I'm the only one when he was running from Jezebel. He said, I'm the only one. After he called fire down from heaven to destroy those prophets of Jezebel, the prophets of Baal. I know how many he killed about 400 some? I mean, one time it was like 200. There was two. The third time they came, they said, hold it, time out. No, don't call any more fire down from heaven. But then he went on the run and he told the Most High, I'm the only one in Yasharal. And what did the Most High tell him? No, you ain't the only one. I got 7,000 that hasn't bowed the knee to Baal. 7,000 out of a nation? 7,000 out of a nation? They came out of Egypt about 600,000. 7,000? If you look at 600,000, and at that time he had 7,000, that wasn't even 10%. That wasn't even 10%. Because I know we think, oh man, no, it's just a remnant. It's just a remnant that's going to make it. So let's go back. So I was thinking about that. Let's go back to Matthew 4:4, because if you say you're saved, if you say you got the Ruach HaKodesh, if you say I guess I'm trying to use a terminology that we can understand. If you say you're saved, I'm saved, I know I'm saved. I don't care what Hazler says. Okay. Let's see if you believe what Yahusha said. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone. What is man supposed to live by according to the words of our Messiah? What is man supposed to live by? According to his words. Not my words, not Shaul's words, not Kepha's words, not Yahukanan's words. None of their words. According to his words, what are we to live by? Torah, by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Elohim, or Torah. That's what we're supposed to live by. Every word that comes out of his mouth. So when I want to go to hear the words that come out of his mouth, because a lot of people say, well, we don't have to listen to the Father anymore. We'll listen to his Son. We want to listen to the Son. We don't want the Father. We see the Father in Torah. We don't like, no. We're glad for the grace and truth that came by his Son. We want to be brought under the Son, because we think that being under the Son, we're going to have grace. Grace. We're going to have mercy. If we come under his Son, we're going to have grace. Right? We're going to have mercy. Right? We come under his Son. Until you see what his Son says. And then you want to, well, that's what his Son says, but now let's listen to what Paul says. Because his Son might have said one thing, but Paul is saying something different. His Son says something in his day and in his dispensation, but now that Paul has come, let's listen to what Paul has to say. But that's not even what our Messiah said, that you're supposed to live off of every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim, or the mouth of my Abba, the mouth of my Father. So if you're not living by every word that proceeds out of his mouth, that will make you disobedient. Actually, it would make you a transgressor. If you're not living by this, you're a transgressor. It's that simple. And a lot of us don't want, there's a lot of things we don't like what Father says. A lot of things that Father says, oh no, I don't like. Exodus 23:13. Exodus 23:13. This is what Father says. Abba. Remember now, every word that proceeds out of his mouth. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and we can pull that word to find out what that means. Because he wants us to live our life in circumspect. So let's see what that word means in the Hebrew here, circumspect. H8104. And it's V. In the context that we want to use, it's in V. So let's scroll down here. This is what the root word means, but we don't have a lot of time. So let's go down here. Guard, to watch over or guard in the sense of preserving or protecting. I wonder what he wants us to guard and protect. Anybody ever thought about that? What does he want me to guard and protect? To watch over, guard in the sense of preserving or protecting. That's why Yahusha said in Matthew 28:20, he says, I want you to, how did he word that? He says, teaching them to obey everything whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the world, and that's the end of the age. To observe whatsoever I've commanded you. To observe. To guard. To watch over. Preserving. Protecting. I want you to protect my commandments. Not break them. I want you to protect my commandment. Every teacher and preacher that follows the interpretation of the book from the post-apostolic fathers, the philosophers, everybody who's caught up under that teaching is going to be lost. Oh, man, that's tall. Well, when you study what the post-apostolic fathers, what they did and how they transitioned the whole, after Paul and the apostles and all of them died off, here come these men to take over. And Yahusha told us, the kingdom suffereth violence, and the violent, what do? They take it by force. We're forcing our way in here. Took it by force because the post-apostolic fathers taught us how to break commandments. They taught us how to break commandments. They told us it's all done away with. You don't have to, Yahusha says you have to live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of my Father or Elohim. And the post-apostolic father said, oh, you don't have to keep that. You don't have to do that. Just throw it away. In fact, don't even open up Genesis to Malachi. Open up your Bible at Matthew. And read Matthew too. Sometimes they'll tell you, open up at the book of Romans. Let's take the Roman road. And they start teaching you from Romans all the way. And we have been pancaked. We have been bull rushed. We have been flattened by that doctrine that everything that Moses taught was done away with. We have been steamrolled to the point where if you say L-A-W, that enemy has done his work so well. If I say L-A-W, people start walking out. He's done his work good. Oh, he's done his work good. You can't even say law. Law is almost like profanity to Christians. As soon as you say law, they want to get up and leave. Oh, no, shut him down. I'm done. As soon as he says that. Okay, let's finish up what this scripture says. Because this is words coming out of the mouth of Elohim. These are words coming out of the mouth of Elohim. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, which means to guard and protect, and make no mention of the name of other Els, Elohim's Els, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. So, December 25th who was the first one that was really recognized of being born on December 20th? Because you can look up everybody who celebrates their birthday on December 25th. Go back. You can go back 4,000 years. If we go back 4,000 years, who are we going back to? Babylon. Who's really known 4,000 years ago? What did he do 4,000 years ago? Nimrod. Somebody can look it up online and you can start to see all these different that were born on December 25th. Our Messiah has nothing to do with December 25th. Our Messiah. Nothing to do with it at all. You don't have to believe me. Do your own research. Look it up yourself. I like to stay in the Bible. I like to stay. And nowhere in the Bible will you find him talking about December 25th. In fact, he doesn't even tell you about his birth. You have to do some study to find out when he was born. First thing you have to understand is the shepherds were out in the field, which means it was not in the dead of winter. Come on. Now, do you think the Roman religion and those who are trapped in the Roman religion and they call themselves saints and Christians, do you think that they will take a minute to stop and think and say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't even be participating in this because a little research will show us he wasn't born at this day and he has nothing to do with this day. They won't do it. I'm talking about apostolic Pentecostal folk. Because I know if apostolic Pentecostal folks do it, you know all those other denominations are doing it. It ought to wake you up because a lot of us, we still have that mindset. We have Constantine's Christianity mindset. We still have it. But isn't it in Philippians where he says, let this mind be in you that was what? Which is also in the Mashiach, Yahusha, right? Let that same mind be. So if I'm looking at the mind of Yahusha, he says, well, man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of my Abba. That's his mind. That's his mind. His mind also says, I didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets. I didn't come to do that. He says, every jot and every tittle. He says, not one jot or tittle will pass from it till all be fulfilled. So has all the prophets been fulfilled yet? If it has, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here if all the prophets have been fulfilled. So now the Roman religion will tell you, oh, that was it. You know how they do it? You know how they do it to deceive? Because we got to get to Thessalonians. I'm going to finish up on Thessalonians, but the second Thessalonians chapter 2 is where I'm going to finish up, I believe. But do you know how they tricked people and got people in this trap? The post-apostolic fathers. You know how they did it? They said, well, that was for that day and that time. You had the time of the Mashiach, and that you have that dispensation. Then after his death, you got another dispensation that sets in. And then when he returns, then there's going to be another dispensation. So they try to put it in blocks of time. And when they do that, they've got you trapped. That's the only way they can be successful with it. They could not be successful any other way. And man, I'm working up a sweat up here. I know some people don't like it. Some people don't like my teaching because they still have the post-apostolic fathers mindset. They have the Roman Constantine mindset. They still have that mindset, so they don't like my teaching. In fact, there are some that will say, don't go there. He's not teaching that Christianity. He's not a Christian teacher, so don't go there. Find another Christian church to go to. They might say Christ Apostolic Church, but they're not Christians. And my answer to that is, I'm not like modern day Christianity. If you want to call me a Christian, associate me with the first century Christians. Associate me with them. They kept the feast days. Because some people, I even heard this. You're in a cult. That's a cult. I heard that. That's a cult. And you know how I answer that? Oh, so Yahusha, or Jesus, because some people like to hear Jesus, but Yahusha, he kept the Shabbat. So I guess he's my cult leader. Yahusha kept all the feast days. So I guess he's my cult leader. They said they plucked out his beard and his hair. So I guess he had a whole bunch of hair on his head and he had a beard. He did. He did. We don't want to hear all that. You're talking about Israel and Israelite. He was of the tribe of Judah, which is the son of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Jacob's father, Isaac, and his grandfather, Abraham, they were Hebrews. So I guess that would make him a Hebrew Israelite. Because that's what they like to say about me. Okay. Well, I want to hurry up and move on here because there's a lot of people that are trapped today, and they're thinking because they're in a quote unquote CHURCH, quote unquote, that they're going to be rescued. And unless he wakes you up, all those people who believe they're in the CHURCH, unless he wakes you up, a lot of them are going to be left here. Because the opportunity is going to come, the time is going to come where we're going to have to get up and leave. But you're going to have a lot of people that's not going to go. They're going to stay right here. I was listening to, and he was not a Hebrew Israelite. It's a historian or something like that. He wasn't a Hebrew Israelite, but I think he calls himself a Jew or whatever. Anyway, he said that in the time of Moses, when the children of Israel was in Egypt, and it was time for them to get up and leave, and they left, and it was a great multitude that left, and it was a kind of a mixed multitude. He said all of the Israelites did not leave. There was still some Israelites left back in Egypt. Because when it was time for them to go, they didn't want to leave. Even the ones who left, he said, in your heart, where were you? Back in Egypt. In their heart, they were still back in Egypt. They went out there murmuring, complaining. I always thought all of Israel came out of Egypt. But this was a historian, not a Hebrew Israelite. And he says, not all of Israel came out. There was still some Israels that remained in Egypt. And that got me thinking, oh man, because that's kind of this second Exodus. We think everybody's going to come out. Everybody's not. Everybody's not going to come out. You're going to have people that's going to want to stay here. They're going to want to stay here because all Israel didn't come out. Well, what happened to those who stayed in Egypt? I don't know what their history is. You probably have to go back because our book shows us the history of those who came out. The ones who came out. But this historian was saying, and that kind of said, whoa. You mean some folks, some Israel still stayed in Egypt? I figure they all came out. Just like today, we think all Israel going to come out. All Israel's not. You got some folks, they like it here, and you have some folks that's in the CHURCH, and they're going to wait. No, I'm going to wait. And not realize the judgment that's going to come on this nation. But those who want to go, those that he gathers, because he says, I'm going to gather my people now. from the four corners and from all nations where they were scattered, I'm going to gather them. You might have heard this. He's not going to take anybody kicking and scratching and don't want to go. Remember we used to hear that? He ain't take, because how it was said was, he ain't going to take nobody to heaven kicking and scratching, don't want to go. That's how it was said. But there's some truth to that, because he's not going to take people who don't want to go. If you don't want to come out from this place, you're going to stay here. There's going to be Israelites remaining in this country when it's time to go. You're going to have some Israelites remaining here. Mark my word. How do you know that? Because there were some Israelites that stayed in Egypt. They didn't even come out. But there were some Egyptians and other people that came out with the Israelites, because it was a mixed multitude. And Moses married an Ethiopian woman in the wilderness. So there was some, and in Leviticus chapter 24, you had an Israelite woman that had a child, and his father was an Egyptian. So you had the mixed multitude that came out. You had Egyptians, you had Ethiopians that came out with the Israelites, but you had some Israelites that remained back. Remember, the only ones that he calls his brothers and sisters are those that's doing the will of his father. That's in our book. He says, your mom and all your brothers and sisters, they want a word with you. He said, the only ones that's doing the will of my father is my brothers, sisters, my mother. So it's the ones that do his will are the ones that's going to come out. Everybody's not doing his will. Because see, they don't do this. And make no mention of the name of other else, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. So how do you think he feels about this pagan time of year? How do you think Abba Yah feels about this pagan time of year? He don't like it. He says, what are you guys doing? My son wasn't born then. Mithra was born then. Nimrod. You know who else birthday you're celebrating? Tammuz. And it says that in the prophet Ezekiel, he told Ezekiel, he put a hole in the wall and told him, look in the wall and see what's going on in the temple. Mothers weeping for Tammuz. He told Ezekiel, I know you don't see, but I want to show you. They're weeping for Tammuz. And you got all these CHURCH folk that's going to sit around underneath a tree and practice this pagan religion, and they're going to give them that day off. You got some CHURCHs that we're not going to have it on this day because this is Christmas Day. We want you to be with your families and y'all go on and enjoy yourself and enjoy your tree and open up the presents. I wouldn't be surprised if in some of these churches on the 25th they have a Christmas tree up there with presents under it and folks go get a present from under the tree. I wouldn't be surprised. It's somewhere in the land, there's probably a church that's got a tree with presents under it, and it's Christmas morning. Folks are going to come into the church and be able to get a prize. We got a present for you. We got a present for little Junior. We got a present for little Susie. We got a present. I wouldn't be surprised. And this is how our Father feels about it. He says, I don't even want y'all to do it. And then Jeremiah chapter 10, it says, learn not the ways of the heathen, nor follow in their customs. And I know when Jeremiah wrote that, it was in the Babylonian captivity, and it was the Babylonians that was doing that. The Babylonians were getting a tree. They didn't call it a Christmas tree, but they were getting a tree to celebrate, and they decorated it. He says, I don't want you to do that. Now, when you get trapped in Christianity, they'll tell you, well, that wasn't talking about a Christmas tree, because they want to get very technical. Because the Christmas celebration didn't come from the Babylonians, it came from the Europeans. That's where the Christmas celebration came from. Was from them, not the Babylonians. But he says, don't learn the way of the heathen. Because this is what they do. At this time of year, they go get a tree. And they bring it in their house. and they decorate it. They even go further. They sing unto it. They put presents underneath it, so you have to get in a prostrate position to get your present, which means you're bowing down to that pagan. So he said, so this is what our Father is saying. So back to Matthew 4:4, when you go back to Matthew 4:4, he says, you're supposed to live by every word that comes out of the mouth of Elohim. That's how you're supposed to live. So if Elohim don't like it and don't want me doing it, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it. I don't want to listen to I don't want to listen to the Father, because I want to listen to the Son, because his Son brought grace. Well, let's see what his Son says. Matthew 5 and 19. Matthew 5, 19 and 20. Let's see what he says. And whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of Shamayim. But whosoever shall do and teach, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of Shamayim. So everybody that is teaching commandments are the ones that will be great in the kingdom of Shamayim. When he comes to set up his kingdom here, everyone that's teaching commandments today will be able to teach commandments in that kingdom. They'll be great in that kingdom. Now, the least, somebody that teaches you to break them, because you have, and y'all know it, because y'all know my background. And those who are listening in, I don't know what your background is, but my background, I know where I came from. And you still have people today that'll tell you you don't have to follow the commandments. You don't have to keep the commandments. You're saved by grace and grace alone, not by any works. But repentance is a work. Repentance is a work. When you repent, the only way we know you repented is you don't go back to that sin. When he told that woman, and not only did he tell that woman, but when he healed a man that was blind. I'm sorry. He was lame and he was on his bed. And he healed that man to where he was able to walk, take up his bed and walk. He healed that man. He told that man, now go and sin no more. He told that man, go and sin no more. He told the woman that was caught in adultery, I'm not going to condemn you now, but go and sin no more. So if you're not teaching the commandments, you're not teaching people how not to sin. I don't want you to sin. You better keep his commandments, because by keeping his commandments, you'll be able to be in that kingdom. For I say unto you that except, now here's what a lot of church people need to understand. Now, these are the words of the Mashiach. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed, not match, but exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of Shamayim. So my righteousness, because that's what he is going to be betrothed unto. He loves your righteousness. When you're following his commandments and we get to teaching on commandments and you're righteous following those commandments, that's what he's betrothed unto. That's what he accepts. That's what he recognizes. I want your righteousness. I don't want no unrighteousness. I want righteousness. And all unrighteousness is sin. All unrighteousness is sin. You know what? You can make a vow. Does he expect you to keep that vow? He expects you to keep that vow. You can make a vow unto him, and if you break that vow, that's unrighteousness, and all unrighteousness is What? All unrighteousness is sin. That's why he tells them, he says, now, when you come into the sanctuary, when you come before the Most High, let your words be few and be more ready to hear than to. But we want folks to come in here, and a lot of times, even the babes in the Mashiach, oh no, tell the world, say it. They might say something that if they make that vow, he's expecting them to keep it. He expects them to keep it. Now, how many vows did we make? Because we might forget them, but he don't forget. He don't forget. And so, did I make this vow? I want to know if I made a vow. Because I always try to, and even in the past and administrations and everything, when there was time, make a vow, I kind of backed, I wasn't so quick to jump out there. I want all, because that's, for somebody to stand up here and say, I want all y'all out there to make a vow. I'd be a little, because I said this, I'm scratching my head, I don't know. And the reason why I did that is because I know how he feels about vows. I know how he feels about vows. And a lot of times, and a lot of teachers and preachers, because of their influence, they'll have young people, and when I say young people, they're just not new to the walk or anything like that. And they will influence them to make all these vows. You need to make a vow on this. You need to make a vow on that. Yes, preacher, yeah, I make a vow. I'm not going to do it. And then you get a little older, then you realize, uh-oh. Or a lot of times you break that vow and you don't realize the offense. Because our Elohim's not a man. He's not a man. He says a couple places in Samuel, 1 Samuel, and also in Numbers, he says, I'm not a man that I should lie, nor the son of man that I'm going to repent. Every word that comes out of my mouth, it's going to accomplish what it's set out to do. Ain't nothing coming back to him void. Nothing. So sometimes I'd be sweating. When I was sitting out there, I'd be sweating. It's like, man, I don't want to say nothing. I don't want to say that vow. And when you got somebody that's telling you trying to tell you and dictate every step that you're supposed to make in life, better be careful. Somebody wants to direct your every step. I thought the word's supposed to direct our step. Just teach me the word. Let the word work on me. I ain't jumping off there to cut my head off, get my head chopped off. Let this word work on me. Because if you make a vow unto him, he expects you to keep it. And we've made a lot of vows, y'all. We done made vows. And we have, you might not believe it, we have sacrificed animals and went through a ceremonial sacrifice and even ate, because that's how you consummate it. They had to eat the sacrifice. When he called the elders up and Musha, and it says Elohim, they seen Elohim, and he did what with them? He sat down and ate with them, because they made these vows and this agreement. They entered into a covenant with him. The animal was sacrificed and they ate it, because the eating of the meal is a consummation of that sacrifice or that agreement or that covenant or that vow. Yeah, it ratifies it. That's just like when you get married and where's the reception? Because after you make those commitments and everything, there's a meal to consummate it. But also in a marriage, what else has to be in a marriage to consummate it? What else consummates it? Blood. Blood consummates a marriage. Ooh, somebody's bleeding? Yeah, somebody's supposed to bleed. Because it's that hyme. When that hyme is pushed and crushed and smashed, blood comes out, and that's the consummation of it. And they had a meal. So how many practices have we gone through where we sacrifice animals and sat down and ate and don't realize what we're doing? Because we don't look at the Bible like that. We're not trained. We're trapped. I'm getting out of it, but trapped in a Roman's mind. You think like a Roman. You don't think like Yahusha. All these CHURCHs think like Romans. You don't think like an Israelite. I don't want to, because you got folks, I don't want to think about an Israelite. I don't like no Israelite. Yahushua Mashiach was an Israelite of the tribe of Judah, if you believe in the book. If you don't believe in the book, if you don't believe that, then that's fine. But it says in Hebrews 7, it is evident our Messiah sprang out of what? He sprung out of Judah. It's evident our Messiah sprung out of Judah, which means he was of the tribe of Judah. He was an Israelite. And everybody that comes to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob down in that line were Hebrews, because Abraham was a Hebrew, Isaac was a Hebrew, Jacob was a Hebrew. And all of Jacob's sons were Hebrews. So Judah was a Hebrew Israelite, and Yahusha came from that tribe, that Yehuda tribe. So he was a Hebrew Israelite. So all I'm saying is think like an Israelite. Stop thinking like a Roman. Because when you think like a Roman, you're going to do what? As the Romans do. If I think like a Roman, I'm going to do as a Roman do. He wants you, let this mind be. Where's that scripture at? Where's that at? Philippians what? 4:13 somewhere? Is that where it's at? That 4:13 is I can do all things. Yeah. Let this mind, 2. I think that's in chapter 2. Chapter 2 and verse 5, yeah. Philippians 2 and 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Constantine. Is that what it said? Is that what it said? Somebody else said, man, you close to blasphemy, man. Don't say that. But that's what people do. They think like Constantine. They think like Constantine. Come on back there. Pull up Constantine's Creed. Do you got it back there? On the computer? Do you have Constantine's Creed? If you don't, we're going to have to pull it up. Oh, delusion. Oh, man, let me hear him I got to get to, because this is a part of our lesson tonight, delusion. I don't know if you got it back there. You'll have to get it. Just kind of work offline while I'm up here and try to find Constantine's Creed. Anyway, people have more of a mindset of Constantine than they do of Yahushua Mashiach. And that's not what he said in Philippians 2 and 5. He said, let this mind be also in you that was in Mashiach Yahushua Mashiach, or Jesus Christ. That's the kind of mind that we have to have. So was the mind of the Mashiach, was it against Shabbat? Oh, no, he would have been a lawbreaker. If he would have lived like these people today that have no regard for the Shabbat and don't even believe in the Shabbat, he would be like a Constantine Christian, which he's not. He kept his father's commandments. So Yahusha kept the feast days. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Mashiach Yahusha, who was there for the feast days and kept the feast days. And y'all know what? In Matthew 26, when he was talking about, do we have it up there? Constantine's Creed. Constantine's Creed. Well, if we don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I thought you had it. We'll get it another time. Y'all see this, right? Y'all see that? I ran that cable all the way back. So we got a direct line now. We don't have to worry about mirroring. It's a direct line, which helps us because we don't have to worry about interference. And because sometimes we would be able to mirror, sometimes we weren't, but we got it now. So we got to get some more things on that computer. Is there any questions out there? So kind of monitor, let me know if there's any questions. Just kind of throw your hand up or something to let me know if there's a question. Okay? So I know. So we have to have that same mind. And the mind of Yahushua Mashiach was to please his Father in all things. He did not go against the commandments. So the world follows a Christ that doesn't keep Torah. I mean, that's kind of dangerous. You're going to follow a Christ that doesn't keep Torah. Doesn't keep the Shabbat days, doesn't keep the feast days, doesn't keep the dietary laws, doesn't keep Torah. I mean, people follow that Christ. The Christ that doesn't keep Torah is not this one that we're talking about, that's written in the book. You have another Christ. And don't be alarmed because he said that in Matthew 24 and verse number 6. Let's go up to 5. For many shall come in what? Saying, I am Christ or Mashiach, and shall deceive many. So, and there's in the same discourse down here, he said there be many false Christs that shall arise and deceive many. So just because somebody say Christ or Christian does not mean we're talking about the same one. There's more than one Mashiach. There's more than one Christ. That's why I like to say Mashiach, and I like to say his Hebrew name, because it separates me. It separates me. And that's what holiness means. When you look up the word holy, holy is Kadesh, which means set apart. You're going to be set apart from the multitude or from the crowd. Now, some people can't handle it. Y'all know how most of us are. We can't stand peer pressure. We have to be with the crowd. Everybody call him Christ. You call him Christ, or we're going to beat you down. Mashiach. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Mashiach, because there's a lot of people coming in this. Let's go down here to that verse where it says, and many Christs shall come, shall deceive many. I think it's further down here. 24, I think? Is that where it's at? Yes. For there shall arise false Christs. False Christs. The Roman Catholic Church has what they call a Mass. They call it Mass. Mass is their services that they have. They coined the word Christ Mass, which we call Christmas, but it's Christ Mass. They coined that word. That word came from the Roman Catholic Church. What it meant for the Christ Mass, what it meant was they wanted all who call themselves Christians to unite under Christ's Mass. Because Mass is when they would come together for their services. So they wanted all church. You know, in Christianity, they have how many denominations? Anybody know how many? Maybe you can do a Google search sometime. We don't have to do it now, but just do a Google search. How many Christian denominations are there? That's just a simple Google search. And so what the Roman Catholic Church wanted was to gather all of those and bring them under one Mass or one service. One service. So we're going to see, because that pagan holiday falls on what day this year? That pagan holiday falls on the first day of the week, and they call it Christ's Mass because they want all denominations to come together under one roof on that day. It's like, it's what you call ecumenicalism. Now, if you got the mind of the Mashiach, you ain't got nothing to do with that. I'm stepping back. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's if you have the mind of the Mashiach. Now, there are false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders. Because y'all know how we're attracted to signs and wonders. He's talking directly to Israelites. How do you know he's talking directly to Israelites? Because Shaul says the Greeks seek after wisdom and the Israelites seek after what? Signs. That's what Shaul says. The Greek seek after wisdom. Israelites or Jews, they seek after a sign because we like signs and wonders. Show me a sign. Because even in our ranks, I'm going to say that I don't want nobody to get offended, because I believe when you're a sinner and you get filled with the Holy Ghost, you're going to speak with a heavenly language. I believe that. I believe that a sinner, when they get filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, they'll speak in a heavenly language as the Spirit gives it utterance. I believe that. But a lot of people are looking for the sign of speaking in tongues. And so when people speak in tongues, they see that as a sign. Even Shaul says that speaking in tongues, according to a believer, is not a sign. Not to us, but to an unbeliever, that would be a sign. But to us, that's not a sign. Where do you get that from? 1 Corinthians 14th chapter. You have to read the whole chapter. It even gives us guidance on people who like to jump up in service and speak tongues. Shaul says, if you got anybody that's going to be speaking in tongues, it's got to be by 2 or 3 witnesses so that they can interpret. And if there's no interpreter, they're supposed to keep silent. Do they practice that in apostolic Pentecostal churches? No. They don't practice that. Because they're looking at speaking in tongues is a sign that you're saved. But a lot of people will speak in tongues and go right back out there and sin. So what does that speaking in tongues mean then? When you can speak in tongues in here and go out there and smoke a cigarette. What does that mean? The devil has a tongue. I've seen it on a number of occasions. And when we had the old church right here, and the service was hot on the first day of the week, and we were baptizing folks. I seen somebody go down in water, and Jesus, they come up out of the water speaking in tongues, walked right out and went right back to their lifestyle. No change. No change. We seen it. We witnessed it. That's true now. Does that happen to everybody? No, because it changed us. It changed us. So what you're saying, you cannot always say speaking in tongues is a sign that you're saved. You can't always say that. You can't always say that. Because you got people who speak in tongues. They don't even follow the guidance that Paul gives us. Now, Paul says, forbid not to what? In the 1 Corinthians 14 chapter. He says, forbid not to speak in tongues. He said, now don't forbid speaking in tongues, and I'm not forbidding speaking in tongues. What Paul says, he says, I speak in tongues more than ye all. But when I'm up in front of you to teach, he said, I'd rather speak 5 words with an understanding than 10,000 in an unknown tongue with no understanding. Now, that's what Shaul said. Now, do they follow that in the apostolic church? No, they don't follow that. They don't follow that. Because you can get a preacher up here. You can get a preacher up here and they can start teaching and preaching and all of a sudden go off in tongues and then everybody just start singing and shouting and falling out in tongues and everything. Can somebody interpret what he said? Now, if somebody stand up and say, wait a minute, let's follow the Bible. Can somebody interpret what he just said? Excuse me, we got any interpreters here? Because Shaul says that if you're going to speak in tongues, you have to have an interpreter. And if you don't have an interpreter, then you need to keep silent. Now, that's in the book. We don't do that, though. We don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. There's a lot of things in this Bible that the CHURCH does not do and does not believe. And there's a day of reckoning coming. There's a day of reckoning coming. And he said, not everybody that says Adonai, Adonai is going to make it into the Shamayim, the kingdom of the Shamayim. Just because you say Adonai, Adonai, just because you say Lord, Lord, that don't mean you're going to get in. Wait a minute. Haven't we done many wonderful works in your name? You know what they said? The first thing they said is, have we not prophesied or preached in your name? Now, I hope y'all know when you look at that discourse that Yahusha was talking about in Matthew 7th chapter, verse 20, 21, 22, I hope you know he was not talking about Islam. Because Islam don't preach in his name. They don't even acknowledge him. They just said he's just a prophet. That's all. They don't even acknowledge him as the Ben Elohim or the Son of God. They don't even acknowledge him. Yeah.
But when they say, haven't we preached in your name, he's going to say no because that wasn't his name.
Yeah. I mean, they've got they have a translation that evolved into what we use today. That's the best way I can put it. It's a transliteration that evolved. Because even in King James 1611, the first one that came out, there was no J. There's no J in the whole book. So it evolved to where it is today.
Wasn't it their intention to keep us from knowing?
Yeah. The people who, the custodian of the book, because they took over the kingdom by force. They just took it over. They took the book. They took the Greek writings. They translated into Latin that nobody could understand, and you had to go to them to even get. See, we don't realize that. When you search apostolic history and everything, because I had Marvin Arnold, is that his name? Yeah. And I read through his from the first century to the 20th century. I read through that to see where. Nowhere in there does he mention that there was no Bible. The only thing they had was written in Latin. Because for 1,200 years, when Eusebius, Jerome, translated the Greek writings, he translated it into Latin. And for 1,200 years, that's all they had. Marvin Arnold made no mention. He talked about how people were martyred, and they had to run and they had to worship in houses and everything. They couldn't open up the book to read because there was no book to open and read. Somebody will look at Marvin Arnold again. I'm trying to figure out how could they have church? If they had church services, what did they use as a book? Did they all speak Latin? Because the Roman Catholic Church has such tight control over the book that you couldn't even read the book. You had to go to them to have them read it. Yes.
When I was thinking that St. Ambrose, when they take religion
they had pictures on the windows because the majority of the people was illiterate. So they not only could they not read Latin, they couldn't read, in general. So the pictures on the wall would tell the story that they wanted the people to know, while they were sitting in their church.
Right. And most of the Roman Empire, even in the time of the Mashiach, most of them spoke Greek. There was very little Latin. Very little Latin. You either spoke Hebrew, Aramaic, Hebrew, or Greek. That's what they spoke. So when Pilate put that up on the cross, nobody could read Latin. There's hardly nobody. None of the Israelites, most of the Israelites couldn't even speak Greek. Paul did not speak Latin. Paul spoke Greek. He didn't even speak Latin. But we have that in our book where it was written in Latin, because when they came in, even in the first century, there was people who weren't speaking Latin. Latin was not popular. Only a few people spoke it. It was not popular in Judea. In Judea, it was Hebrew or Greek. And the Greeks were the more high society. They were the Hellenists. You know how we have in our community, you got those who can speak real fluent English, and then you got some that just chop it up. Busting participles. No verbs. Couldn't speak a verb. Verb against a verb. I mean, that's how we chop it up. But then you have those who speak that very fluent English. Even when you hear somebody from England and they speak English, that sounds so different than the way we speak English. Oh, man, they got that. What kind of English is that? Then you have a dialect that's more Southern. You got folks that speak that Southern drawl. So back then in that day, most of the people spoke a Hebrew dialect. Our Messiah spoke Hebrew because they even said when he was on the cross, he said, Elohim, Elohim. And they even thought, is he calling for Elijah? Because he said, Elohim, Elohim, why hast thou forsaken me? He said, Eli, Eli, that's how they say it. But he said, Ali, Ali, lama sabachthani, which is my Elohim, why have thou forsaken me? But they had to translate it. There were some other things because he spoke a dialect of Hebrew that was not the Aramaic Hebrew. So when Peter spoke that kind of dialect Hebrew, it gave him away. Because that 12-year-old girl says, I seen you with one of them. He said, no, that wasn't me. He says, you talk like them. You have the same dialect of Hebrew. You talk like them. And he started cussing. He started using profanity. But the Messiah told him now, before the cock crows twice, you're going to deny me 3 times. I mean, it was, he just spoke it and it happened. So, false Christs and false prophets and shall show great signs and wonders, so much that if possible, what would they do? Because the very elect is a remnant. It's not all Israel. We think Israel, it's all Israel. It's not all. The elect, because Shaul said he was the elect, but the elect were the ones who were called out. Because even in the house of Israel, not all of them were called out. You only had those who were the elect that were called out. And he says, if possible, you're going to deceive those very elect ones. So let's look at, let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and let's start at verse number 7. Verse number 7. For the mystery of iniquity, and this whole chapter, we can read it in your spare time because I'm running out of time, but this whole chapter, Shaul actually thought that the apocalyptic was going to happen in his day and time. He finds out it ain't happening while it's not going to happen in my time. And he died before the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. But just that, if you went back up to the top of the chapter here, but he says here, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. Now, it's good for me, a practice for me is if I read something, I'm just not quite sure. I mean, the way it's phrased, let me, so what I do is I'll just go to another version, just see how they take it. Because here, when we first were taught this, it was like the one who will be taken out of the way is a CHURCH. That's how it was taught to me. When you look at 2 Thessalonians 2:7, that the one that will be taken out of the way is the CHURCH. Let's look at this in the English Standard Version. The Sefer is, for the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now lets will let until he be taken out of the way. Not too much different there. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is out of the way. So who is actually preaching against lawlessness? Who's actually preaching against lawlessness? Because in the CHURCH, as soon as you say law, they don't want to hear you no more. We're not under law. We're under grace. And anything that is anti-law or iniquity is lawlessness. So you have people standing up today saying, hey, no, we have to follow the commandments. We have to follow what is in the law that's applicable to me. What I need to know. I'm not a farmer. There's things that I know it's written, and one jot or one tittle is not going to pass. I know it's still written, but I'm not a farmer. I don't have to worry about land and the seventh year letting the land rest as a Shabbat. I can barely go a garden. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to get me a little garden, So there's some laws it's not done away with. How do I know it's not done away with? Because it's eternally written in heaven. We're under the law. We're on earth. It's up in heaven. We're under it. There's things that he spoke from heaven that are still in effect today. One jot or one tittle will not pass from it. People do animal sacrifices today. We say, well, the animal sacrifice. You just went through a holiday where you did an animal sacrifice. Everybody that got a turkey, that turkey was killed for you to celebrate that holiday. It was a ceremonial thing that you did. And you ate it. And then you want to turn around and tell me, oh, he's talking about the law. Where's your sacrifice? You just went through one, brother. When you sat down at that table and ate a turkey, you went through a ceremonial sacrifice that you want to try to condemn somebody. The more I understand, I'm so glad. I was going to say something. I'm so glad I can see it now. It's very plain the more I understand. But I didn't get my teaching from the CHURCH. That's not where I got it from. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is out of the way. So who is he going to gather and get out of the way? All right. So let's go back. Because preachers who are preaching against iniquity and lawlessness, they ain't going to be around too much longer. Let's go back. They ain't going to be around too much longer. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yahusha shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. So who is he going to destroy? It says here, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, because we love to see signs. We love to see signs. If folks ain't singing, jumping, shouting, flipping, doing backflips, bouncing off the walls, jumping up on the pews, cutting a step, and they say it's holy, but you practiced it. You can't, some of them dances, you can't tell me you ain't practiced that. You didn't practice how to cut that step. We got to make sure the floor got some slide to it. I got these shoes. I want to. I got to have the right shoes on. But there ain't nothing wrong with dancing. There's nothing wrong with dancing because our Messiah, our Most High Yah says, I want you to do a new dance. I'm tired of that dance. So he does say that in the Psalms. He says, do a new dance. I heard something today. It was kind of funny because he was saying, Yahusha will knock on your door. He'll knock on your door. He'll knock on your heart's door. He'll awaken you in your spirit. He'll knock on you. He says, you better answer. And then he goes on and says, when you go over somebody's house and you knock on their door, how long do you wait till you realize nobody's home? I mean, when you go knock on somebody's door, do you stay there for hours? Half a day? A whole day? The sun goes down, you knocking. Sun come up, you still knocking. No, you don't do that. You knock on the door, but when you realize nobody's home, what do? You leave. And he was saying, when Yahusha knocks on your door, you better answer. Because if he realizes nobody's home, you ain't going to answer. He's gone. That's why some folks, they might come and he knocks on their door trying to get their attention and they don't answer and you never see him again. He said, well, ain't nobody home. You think I'm going to stay here? Well, how would you stay? You going to stay there knocking? Every time I see him, I'm knocking. Every time I see him. When will you realize nobody's home? I heard that and go, man, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. When he knocks at your door, he's knocking on your head, knocking on your brain, he's knocking on your spirit. You better answer. Because when he realizes ain't nobody home, just like you, ain't nobody home, I'm gone. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved, or soteria, sozo, to be rescued. They don't receive the love of the truth that they might be rescued. Nobody's home. So what does he do then? Verse 11, and for this cause Elohim shall send them what? Strong delusion, that they might believe a lie. Now let's look at what this delusion is. Let's look at this delusion. Let's go over to the etymology. Here it is, delusion. Okay. Can y'all see this? Or is that too small? Can y'all see it? Is that better? Okay. Delusion is the act of misleading someone, deception, deceit, early 15th century. Delusion from Latin, that's what it is in the Latin, is delusium. Delusio. A deceiving noun of action from past participle, stem of delude, as a form of mental derangement. A form of mental derangement. False impression or belief of a fixed nature. And that was in the 16th century, 1550s. Now, this is what caught my eye. I was reading this. Technically, Delusion is a belief that, though false, it's false now, though false, has been surrendered to and accepted by the whole mind as a truth. You know it's false, but you surrender with your whole mind as if it's true. Now you know it's false now. People know that this time of year is false. It's not his birthday. It's false. I mean, it's false. It don't take much to understand it's false. Though false, has been surrendered to and accepted by the whole mind as a truth. Illusion is an impression that, though false, is entertained provisionally on the recommendation of the senses or the imagination, but awaits full acceptance and may not influence action. Delusions of grandeur. So people know that this time is false. It's a false time of year. But they've already surrendered in their mind. They've already surrendered that it's true. Then here comes illusions. So though it's false now, they like to entertain. And their senses, on the recommendation of senses or the imagination. So this whole time of year is just a delusion of grandeur. Because people love this time of year even though they know it's false. You're in delusion. There ain't no truth to it, but you can't wait. You can't wait for this time. I waited all year for this. Delusions of grandeur. So the Most High Yah says, oh, that's how you guys act? Okay. I'll send you strong delusion. That's why people can't get out of it. So-called saved folks can't get out of it. They can't get out because it's a delusion. They believe it although it's false. Man, that you know you deceive. And then you exercise your imaginations and you can't get out of it. It becomes an illusion. Though false, is entertained provisionally on the recommendation of the senses. We love to see the lights, the eyes, the lights. I mean, people go through the neighborhoods. Ooh, look at the lights on the house. Look at all these houses lit up. It appeals to the senses, my sight. We can't wait for certain foods. I only eat it once a year at this time. Your taste. Eggnog, that's a good one. That's a good one. Never have eggnog till this time of year. So you exercise those senses. Those senses start working. And we just love to have it so. People just love to have it so. And you don't realize when people get through this season, there's a state of depression that comes on folk. And you'd be surprised how many people commit suicide. Delusions of grandeur. They didn't entertain it. They knew it was wrong, but they entertained it provisionally by their senses, through their senses. This is dangerous, y'all. It is so dangerous. And the CHURCH don't give us no help. They ain't helping us. They're doing it themselves. They ain't helping us. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back. I'm a sin for this cause because you don't love truth. You don't love truth. So for this cause, all right, not just a delusion, but what? Strong one. Strong delusion. And that with that strong delusion, you're going to believe a lie. That they all might be damned who believe not the truth. You know it's a lie. You know it's false. You know good and well it has nothing to do with the day he's born. Not at all. Nothing. There's no Mashiach in it at all. You know that. But you rather believe a lie. Rather believe a lie. But you know how they do it with that delusion of grandeur, and they start to work on your senses. They start in October. Actually, they start before. I mean, do you know they start setting out stuff for the holiday for this time of year? I was thinking in October. It might even be before that. I don't know. But they start setting you up. They start preparing you. And you roll from Halloween, that old Devil's Day, Day of the Dead. You roll from that, and they're just preparing you. They're just running the sheep to the slaughter. You go from that to Thanksgiving, and you actually do a ceremonial animal sacrifice, and you sit down and eat it. And then you rise up and talk about Israelites who tell you that one jot and one tittle haven't even passed from the law is still there. There ain't no animal sacrifice. You just went through one. You just went. People are silly. People are silly. And the reason why we don't understand it is because we haven't been taught what it was like to have a kingdom and what they did when they came out of Egypt, and how he gave them the Torah and what they were supposed to do, and how the priests did it, and how they sat down and ate the meal. It was even told of the priests, those animal sacrifices, when that meat is in the cauldron, and you get your hook, and you put that hook in there and you pull it out, and you might be a leg man, but you got a shoulder. No, you get that shoulder and you eat it. That was part of the law, because they would eat those. Once they sacrificed, they burned up the guts, and the Levites kept the skins. That was leather. They would keep that. They would trade leather, but they would cook up, or they would burn up all the innards, but the meat is what they ate. Yes.
Until you said that, this animal was designed for the sacrifice, you just never looked at it that way. And, I was kind of confused until you just came out and said it, that the turkey is to represent that holiday.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And that you cooked it, and that means you took part in that,
And
because it's never explained anything like
right.
That. Even, that that's a sacrifice or anything.
Yeah, it is. It's you sacrifice that animal for that ceremony.
Yeah.
And we even do it at Passover time. It's a lamb that is sacrificed, and we eat that meal. We have lamb on that meal. There's nothing wrong with that, because it's still written. It's still written. Right. He says not one jot or tittle is going to pass from it. We don't have an understanding of the ceremonial or the sacrifice because we weren't brought up in that culture, and they don't teach us that culture. We learned the culture of the Romans. The Roman religion is the one that gave us our book. And so it's through that culture and that language that we understand it. If we were to understand it through Israelites, and people who understand Torah, we would have a different perspective on it, because that's how it was taught and everything. It's just that we come up under the Roman religion, so it's just totally foreign to us. To build this assembly, we had a lot of sacrifices. There was a lot. What do you mean sacrifices? We had chickens. We bought chickens that were dead, and we sold them, ate them, and profited off of them so we can do this. And what?
Chicken, fish.
And yeah, there was some, y'all know y'all like them ribs. Y'all ate them. I didn't eat them. Y'all sacrificed swines. I mean, y'all know they didn't eat meat all the time now. They would go a long while without eating meat. See, we're of the mindset, 3 full meals a day, you got meat in each meal. That's not how they ate. They didn't eat like that. They were more what we would call in today's term vegetarians or vegans. They were more, but they did eat meat, especially around feast time. And the ones who were, like King David, King Solomon, if you sat at their table, oh man, yeah. But just the average Israelite didn't eat a lot of meat. They just didn't. The ones who fared a little better, they probably had more consumption of meat. But they didn't have refrigeration. They had salt that would kind of preserve it. They would pack it in salt to preserve it. But otherwise, they could. And in fact, at the time of Passover, whatever you didn't eat, you're supposed to burn up.
Right, you didn't save it.
No, there was no leftovers. Ain't no leftovers. You eat what you can eat, and if you don't finish it off, burn it up. That's what they did a lot of times. So we still have that. Because, I hear people, and I used to repeat it because I didn't know. But the more I study and read it and understand it and listen to people who still do, and then understand, oh man, that's what we still do it. That's what we do, And at Easter time, it's a ceremonial meal to have swine at Easter. And so all of those swine are killed and slaughtered so that you can have that meal on that pagan holiday. So it was sacrificed. That life was sacrificed. Yes.
I was going to say, it's funny when you look at it, a lot of the things that they did then, and I don't know what other elements they may or didn't have. I know it wasn't like what we have now, but a lot of it kept them from having a lot of these diseases that we now have, cholesterol, whatever, high blood pressure, because if you kill something, you can't be gluttonous because you can't go back and eat. That late in the midnight hour, I gotta have a snack or whatever.
Yeah, raid in the refrigerator before you go to bed.
Or 2 or 3 helpings because it tastes really, really good. Not because you're not full, you're already full, but because it tastes so good, you gotta go back for that second or third plate.
Yeah,
but they had to burn it up. That took away gluttony right there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, gluttony it does say gluttony is a sin. That's in Deuteronomy. Gluttony is a sin. So, and I see what we call saved. Oh man, they so saved and anointed. I see them glutton and commit sin. I used to meet with the brotherhood around here. This is pre-pandemic. And we would get together once a month, pastors and deacons from the area, just community, and we would go to different places and eat. Didn't I tell y'all this? I think I told y'all. Yeah, I sat across from this one brother. He was sitting across from the table because we went to the boat, when they had those smorgasbord, all you can eat. And I didn't fill my plate up. I just got a little bit of something, and I didn't even get a dessert because I didn't like what. Of course, when it's buffet like that, I'm just not, because everybody walks by your food. You're putting some on your plate, but there's been hundreds of people in front of you that was looking over their food. But anyway, you guys know the story. But yeah, a guy had 3 helpings. He packed up his plate and then got almost every single dessert. And then after he ate, he put his hands on his big old stomach like this. And I said, man, I wonder if he knows he just sinned. That's a sin. For him to just glutton like that is a sin. We're not supposed to do that. You know how big your stomach is? It's only about as big as your fist. That's about how big your stomach is. So when you keep eating and you're stretching that. You stretch that stomach.
It's not illegal to
What the sin is gluttony. The sin is just eating too much. I mean, so a gluttony. I mean, what I observed, I would say that was gluttony because to me, 3 plates full of food, I mean.
It depends. I think it depends. Everybody's different. Like some people get full super fast, and some people it takes longer to fill their stomach. This is just you just eating it because it tastes good, not that your brain.
Yeah.
Because it takes 20 minutes for your brain to tell your stomach that you're full.
I usually,
Fast and you know.
now if I eat my first helping and I don't get full, I'll usually, and my wife would tell you at home, I didn't get full in the first helping, so, but then when I get full, but you can train yourself. You can train yourself to where after you eat, your first portion, I'm not going to eat anymore. And you get into that habit, your stomach will shrink and you won't be eating a lot.
So if you eat till you're just miserable and you can't do nothing.
Yeah. That's just too much. That's just too much. You're not eating because you're hungry. You're just eating because the food is there. I'm just going to keep eating. So, I mean, it's kind of relative when you say gluttony. It is kind of relative, And you have to know it for yourself. I mean, for me, if my seconds is as big as my first, then I'm probably getting into that. I have to be careful. But I know gluttony is relative. But it is a sin. That they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in what? And all unrighteousness is sin. And you're going to see how many people commit sin on December 31st or December 25th, and then come back on December 31st and January 1st and sing and shout the new year in after they did this. How do you know? Because we did it. We did it. We did it. I'm so glad I'm delivered, though. I'm so glad I'm delivered. Anybody remember those Christmas club accounts? You used to save up all year. So you could go out at this time of year and spend all that money and then some and go into debt.
Right.
And then what you spent that money on in a week is gone, is broken, and the kids ain't playing with it, and it's gone. In a week's time, sometimes less than that. So I'm so glad I'm delivered, and I know better now. Okay, any questions or comments? Because one thing that we just let me get this one last scripture, Isaiah 9:16. Isaiah 9:16, because we never take this into account. We never take this into account. For the leaders of this people cause them to what? Didn't James say? What did he say about this? Do not what? Do not err, my dear brother. Isn't that what he said? James said that. In all things, do not err, my dear beloved. Something to that. For the leaders of this people cause them to err. And they that are led of them are what? And that's where Yahusha says, if the blind lead the blind, all of them going into the ditch. How many of y'all know that he mainly talked to Israel? That's who he was talking to. He wasn't going out to Gentile nations. He was talking to Israel. He was talking to Israel. So if somebody's telling me that ain't nothing wrong with this time of year, we're just celebrating his birth, you have no scriptures for that. Not one. Not one. Because there's no scripture anywhere in this book that talks about celebrating his birth. The only thing he told you is remember my death. Don't you ever forget my death. You remember my death. And if you do want to study his birth, the shepherds were out in the field. So it wasn't December 25th. But it's easily proven. But you'll have leaders that'll tell you, ain't nothing wrong with it. Because when he sends that strong delusion, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. It'll work on your senses. And a lot of people can't get out. They can't get out. So if there's no questions, anybody got any questions on that? And if not, then we're going to be back here on the Shabbat with our Shabbat service and Torah teaching. If nothing, nobody's got nothing. Yes.
This is a question. I don't know who all gets like updates from WhatsApp, but on Sunday, December 18th at 12 p.m. Central, Dr. Will Johnson will be doing a practical health information seminar. If you want to be a part of it, you have to go to the Great Awakening website to register. It's free. He's going to discuss proper nutrition, GMOs, vitamins, herbs, supplements, weight loss, product label, recognition, fasting, and more. And then there's also something going on the 28th of December, where they're going to be talking about money, health, things like that.
And I hope we're still taking our time to fast. We should still be fasting and praying. And when I fast, I kind of go to bed early, I guess, and I'm not eating in my sleep. So it starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I don't get up at 5 o'clock and go eat because I'm going to start fasting at 6. I don't do that. I don't do that. I get up at my normal time and routine of prayer and everything, my fast. I start and fast because when it says take a day of fast, that day is from 6 A to 6 P.
Are we on a community fast, or is everybody on their own? I thought we did a Wednesday.
Yeah, we're supposed to be fasting on Wednesday. That was our corporate. Yeah, and we should still be fasting. Now, do I fast every Wednesday? I don't fast every Wednesday, but I'm getting back into it. Yeah, we should have never lost, that day should have always been there. Wednesday roll around, it's a fast day. And then you can always fast more. Now we did on atonement, and then there was something, they wanted all of the teachers, the mores and zakins. We went on a 5-day fast, and then now I'm fasting, doing some extra fasting because I'm asking him for some healing and on my sister's body. So some things only come out through fasting and prayer, so those are just some of the things that we just have to understand, that we should never get away from fasting and praying. In fact, if you have a relationship with him, your spirit will cry out. So if you're not praying and that spirit's not crying out, well, then you don't have a relationship with them. You just don't. Because your spirit, your ruach, if it's the spirit of the Son, if it's the ruach crying in you, it's going to cry out and pray to Abba Father, and then it's going to have groanings and moanings that you can't utter. It is speaking. You might be speaking, I don't know what I'm speaking. It's just the ruach is speaking. That you have that relationship with him. But if you ain't praying, you ain't got no relationship with them. And that's why a lot of people are bold to do what they do, because they're not praying. They don't have that relationship. Because if you have a relationship with them, like Yahusha said, I do always those things that please my Father. I ain't trying to tip out. I ain't doing transgressing. I ain't trying to see how much I can get away with. I ain't, lying, stealing, cheating. I ain't doing none of that, That's if you have a relationship with them. Okay, let's stand. Anybody got anything to give, you can give. Because it does say in Luke chapter 7 that he will give unto you, those who give, it will be given unto you, pressed down, shaken over, will men put in your bosom. And we're still working on